Many of us might still be feeling the creeps from stories that we've heard and read as children, stories that have been called children's stories, stories of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Why did she go steal things that weren't hers? And stories of Humpty Dumpty falling off a wall and three blind mice. Why were they blind? And the list goes on of strange, detailed stories. But I do want to dwell on the Goldilocks and the Three Bears one. If you're not familiar, Goldilocks goes to a forest and there's a deserted home. It's not really deserted. The bears who owned the joint, they went out and about, probably looking for food. And Goldilocks has the audacity to go into their home and she tries out all their stuff, right? The porridge and the chairs and the beds. And eventually the bears do come back and they're like, what are you doing here? And she freaks out and she runs away, never to be seen again. But backtrack a few moments into the story, Goldilocks, when she was trying out the mother and the father's and the baby bear's stuff, she always went for the baby bears, claiming it was just right. It was the perfect condition. It was just right. And beyond the scariness and the randomness for a children's story, scientists and behavioral psychologists actually point to Goldilocks to tell us something about our planet and the human psyche. Scientists, NASA included, they claim that Earth is actually what's called the Goldilocks zone of the solar system. The Goldilocks zone represents the place, the area in our solar system that's just right, that's suitable for life. And if Earth were to be where Pluto is, it would be frozen. Life as we know it would not be able to exist. If Earth was anywhere closer to the sun than it currently is, it would not be able to sustain life. It would completely heat up and it would turn into steam or what have you. Earth, where it's placed, exactly where it is, where God placed it. Yes, it's 93 million miles away from the sun. It's the perfect place for human life. It's the Goldilocks zone. And in behavioral psychology, psychologists use this rule. It's called the Goldilocks rule or the Goldilocks principle, claiming that the human being thrives on focusing on challenges that are just right. Things that are too extreme, either too hard or too easy, we don't do. But we go for the challenge that's in that perfect condition, that's just right. It's just challenging enough, but something that we can do. This is what's called the Goldilocks principle. And it's a principle, like we said, that's used in the science. It's a principle that's used to understand our psyche. But it's also something that we as Jewish people understand very deeply. And I want to share with you the Goldilocks zone, the spiritual Goldilocks zone of the world. We said Earth is the Goldilocks zone of the solar system, but what is the Goldilocks zone? What is that perfect, that just right place of Earth? And the answer, my friends, is Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. The pasuk, the verse in Ezekiel calls the land of Israel the Tabor Haaretz, the navel of the earth. The Radak, the commentary, points out that just like the navel, the belly, is the center of the human being, so too Eretz Yisrael, the holy land of Israel, is the center of the world. But my friends, if we want to find the center of the center, we got to keep exploring. Yes, Eretz Yisrael is the center of the earth. Earth is the center of the solar system, and Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is the center of earth. What is the center of Israel? The answer is Jerusalem, the city of Yerushalayim. And in the center of Yerushalayim lies the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. And I think now we could begin to understand the seriousness of the day of Tisha B'Av. It wasn't just some random hotel in Miami. It wasn't some random skyscraper in Dubai. It wasn't some random structure in the heart of Manhattan. The Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, was a structure that stood in the center of the center of the center of the universe. And it represented the ultimate Goldilocks zone. It was the place that was the epitome of what's just right. Perfect harmony, perfect balance between two worlds, perfect balance between heaven and earth. We would take karbanos, we would take animal offerings and bring them up on the altar in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple, as a means of getting closer to God. We took the lowest of the low and brought it to the highest of the high. The word korban in Hebrew means kiruv. Karav means close. This place, the Beis HaMikdash, represented the center of the center of the center, the ultimate Goldilocks zone, the ultimate chibur, the ultimate connection between the two worlds, which is really our calling and our purpose and our mission as Jewish people on planet Earth. We don't live in the extreme. Even Earth, if you look at what Earth looks like, Earth itself has extremes. It's called the North Pole and the South Pole. And there's a reason why those two areas are white. It's because they're frozen. It's because they're extreme. It's on the top and it's on the bottom. And besides for some narwhals and penguins and maybe some polar bears, that's not where life is sustained, because life is not sustained on the edges. It's not sustained on the extremes. God doesn't want us to be in the extreme. He wants us to be in the center. He wants us to live with the embodiment of Eretz Yisrael, with the embodiment of Jerusalem, the embodiment of the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, that represented a connection between the two worlds, between heaven and earth, between spirituality and physicality, between Shemayim and Aretz. You don't have to look too far. The very first verse of all of Tanakh tells us, Bereshis bara Elokim es Shemayim ve'es Aretz. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth. And our rabbis tell us that the Shemayim, the heavens, represents Ruchniya, spirituality, and Aretz, the earth, represents the physicality, Gashmias. But both were created. Shemayim and Aretz were meant to be connected. They were meant to be infused. They were meant to be a chibur, a connection. The Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, stood as a representation for that, a representation of our calling. But my friends, when we veered off center and we went too extreme spiritual, too extreme physical, then what happened? The Beis HaMikdash needed to be destroyed. And our calling to bring it back is to bring ourselves back to the middle ground. The Rambam says Maimonides teaches, when it comes to character development, we always have to find the derech memutza, the middle path, the middle ground, because that is the way to go, not to veer off yamin or small, not to go too right or too left, but to be in the middle. That's where life is. That's the embodiment of our national homeland, of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, of its holy city of Jerusalem, which David HaMelech tells us it was a city, shechubra layachdav, a city of chibur, a city that joined these two worlds together. And in that center of the center of the center, the ultimate spitz, paragon example of the Goldilocks zone of this universe, was the Holy Temple, the Beis HaMikdash, that place of ultimate chibur, place of ultimate connection. But we veered off. We veered off kilter, off center. How did we do so? My friends, the period of the 3 weeks is a period of 21 days, which means there are bookends. It's the beginning of the 3-week period was Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th day of Tammuz, and the end of the 3-week period is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. And what happened on those two bookend, those two extreme dates? What happened? Something extreme happened. On the 17th of Tammuz, Moshe Rabbeinu, came down the mountain and he saw us dancing around the Egel, the golden calf, and he broke the tablets. That was the 17th day of Tammuz, marking the beginning of the 3-week mourning period for the Jewish people. But what was the mistake of the Jewish people? The mistake was that they were too extreme. What did they say? They miscalculated the date when Moses was supposed to come down the mountain, and they saw a vision that the Satan showed them in the sky. It was a vision of Moshe being dead. And they said, Vadai Meis Moshe, surely Moses is dead. Instead of believing that maybe there's something else. They were so convinced, they were so sure, Vadai, surely Moses is dead. That was a sin of extremism. Not only that, but Moshe, when he heard that the Jewish people degenerated, right? God already told him when he was on top of the mountain, hey, go down the mountain. The Jewish nation has just degenerated. They just committed a sin. Moshe didn't throw down the luchos right then. It was only when he saw them dancing around the golden calf, Only when he saw them dancing did he throw down the luchos. And the great teacher of Yaakov Kamenetsky tells us is because Moshe Rabbeinu, when he heard that the Jewish people degenerated, he gave them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, people, they weren't sure where their leader was. But once he saw them dancing connotes joy. Dancing connotes I'm into this. Once he saw that the Jewish people weren't just serving an idol, but they were serving it with joy. They were dancing around it. That was almost unforgivable, and he had to break the luchos, and that marked the beginning of the 3-week period. It was a time when the Jewish people were so in the realm of extreme heresy, extreme idolatry. And on the flip side, on the other side of the 3 weeks, the opposite bookend, that was Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, historically was the day when the Meraglim, the 10 spies, returned from spying out the land of Israel, and they delivered their negative report to the Jewish people. And the Jewish people cried what's called a bechia shel chinam, a cry of naught, cry for nothing. It was a cry of despair. And this ultimately was also a mistake of extremism. How so? The Jewish people gave up hope. They said, Lo nuchal, we are unable to ascend. Well, what about the fact that God took you out of Egypt? What about the fact that God performed so many great open miracles for you? And now you're saying, oh, we're done. We cannot ascend. We won't be able to get into the Holy Land. They were caught in the extreme. And in another realm, the Meraglim, the 10 spies, they suffered from extreme spirituality. Why is that? When the Jewish people were in the Midbar, right? Hashem took us out of Egypt, and we were in the Midbar, the desert. What did we experience there? We experienced the ultimate spiritual realm, right? God protected us with the Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory, a tremendous protection that protected us and that guided us through the Midbar. How did we eat? Were we nourished? Through the Be'er, through the great miraculous well, and through the manna, the mun, right? And this was a great spiritual existence that we had in the desert. And when God said, well, now you're going to go and travel to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, there you're going to have to wage wars, you're going to have to toil the land, you're going to have to work hard. The Meraglim, the 10 spies, they said, we want to remain in that spiritual. We don't want to go into the physical. We don't want to fight battles. We don't want to toil the land. We don't want to work. We don't want to be involved in this world. And that was their mistake. They were in the realm of the extreme spiritual, points out the Sfas Emes. And the mistake is true on both bookends. We could be involved in the extreme physical or the extreme spiritual, but both extremes, like the North and the South Pole, don't sustain life. That's not what God wants. We are meant to find the Derech Mamutza, the middle ground, the Goldilocks zone, to find that space of harmony, that space of beauty, that space of grandeur. When we bring worlds together, that's what we're meant to do, is join the spiritual and the physical, join heaven and earth. In Eicha, in the book of Lamentations, we're taught, Hishlich mishamayim aretz, that it was thrown down from heaven to earth. And the commentaries explain that there was a great nefila, a great fall from heaven to earth. What was the great fall from heaven to earth? It was exactly this point. The Jewish people suffered from a great fall. You only fall when you're disconnected. You only fall when there's a lack of connection. There's never meant to be a fall from heaven to earth, because heaven and earth are meant to be connected. Remember, Bereshis bara Elokim eis hashamayim ve'eis haaretz, the very beginning of all of Tanakh, the very first verse of the entire Torah. God created heaven and earth. They're meant to be together. Heaven and earth, spirituality and physicality, body, soul, we're meant to fuse the two together. We're not meant to live with asceticism. We're not meant to live just in the realm of the spiritual. Again, that was the sin of the Meraglim. That was the sin of the Egel Hazav, the golden calf. We're meant to join forces, bring Shemayim and Aretz together. Hishlich mishamayim Aretz, where it was thrown down, the heaven, the Aretz was thrown down from heaven, meant that there was a disconnect that we were creating between heaven and earth. And that was the mistake. The book of Eicha, the Gemara tells us, is called the Sefer Kinnos, the book of Lamentations, the book of Kinnos. The word Kinnos in Hebrew is spelled Kuf Yud Nun Vav Taf, right? Kuf Yud Nun Vav Taf. And when you rearrange those letters, it spells another Hebrew word. That word is nituk. Nituk means disconnect. When we are disconnecting heaven and earth, then we can experience a fall from heaven to earth. And when there's that disconnection, that leads, chas v'shalom, heaven forbid, to kinnos. That leads to lamentations. That leads to destruction. When we're not living in the center, and when we're off center, the Beis HaMikdash needed to be destroyed. And our goal, our mission and purpose is to get back to that goal, to get back to the harmony, to get back to infusing the two worlds together. My friends, when you rearrange those same letters of Kinnos, Kuf Yud Nun Vav Taf, and the letters of Nituk, it's all the same letters. When you rearrange them again, it spells Tikkun, right? You may have heard the term Tikkun Olam. Our job on this world is to fix the world. Fixing connotes mending parts, fusion, bringing worlds together. That is our job, not for nituk, not to separate the worlds, not for kinnos, but for tikkun, to bring the worlds together. That is our job. That is the calling of a Jew. In Parshas Pinchas, when the Torah tells us the Jewish family names, something really interesting occurs. If you look in the text of a Torah scroll, and that is before and after the name of the Jewish family, there are two letters. There's a Hey and a Yud. So for example, the family name Chanoch is called Ha-Chanochi. So the letter Hey is placed before it, and the letter Yud is placed after it. The name Ruvain is called Ha-Ruveni. And the Torah does this dozens of times, where it adds a Hey before the name and a Yud after the name, thus becoming part of the name. Rashi, the great commentary, tells us, Hitil Shemo, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God placed his name, right? Because God is called Ka, God is called Yud and Hey together. Those two letters create God's name. In fact, the four-letter name of God, Yud, then Hey, then Vav, then Hey. The first two letters, Yud, then Hey, it's representative of God. And he placed his name upon us, right? Representing that we have a certain level of holiness and purity. But there's something more. Rashi tells us, Hey mitzad zeh, the Yud mitzad zeh. There was a Hey on this side and the letter Yud on that side. And it's representative of our very purpose on this world. The great Rav of Nitra, the Av Bezdin of this old city in Europe, he lived from 1886 to 1945. His name was Rav Shmuel David Unger. It was one of the last surviving yeshivas that existed before the war. And he taught us this, that when Rashi tells us, Hey mitzad zeh, v'yud mitzad zeh, that the Jewish people, they have a Hey before their name and a Yud after their name, this tells us of our mission, our purpose, because we know that these two letters are not random. The Hey and the Yud are not random letters. Our sages teach us that what? The two worlds, this world, Olam Hazeh, and that world, the world of spirituality, Olam Haba, they were created with letters. What letters? This world, says the Gemara, was created with a Hey, and the Olam Haba was created with a Yud. So the Yud represents the spiritual, it represents the Shemayim, it represents the heavenly and the spiritual abode, spirituality. And the Hey represents this world, the world of Gashmi, the world of physicality, the realm of Aretz. And Hey mitzad zeh, v'Yud mitzad zeh, the Jewish people have both of these letters attached to our identity, because this is our essence, to be a chibor, to make that connection between the two worlds. Like Yaakov Avinu, who dreamt a dream about a ladder which connected the two worlds. That is our calling here on this planet. And that was the function of the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was that place of ultimate connection, the ultimate Goldilocks zone. And our job is to come back together. During the 3 weeks, we're reminded of the extreme negativity, the extreme physicality that we involved ourselves in, and the extreme spirituality that we were mistakenly involved in. And through the Bein Hamitzarim, the period of between the straits, our job is to find the medium, to find the balance, to find the harmony, to find the beauty of worlds coming together. Not to do nituk, not to separate the two worlds, which leads, God forbid, to kinus, but to do tikkun, to mend the two together and bring them back as one. There is a fascinating halacha on Tisha B'Av, and that is we don't don the tefillin, the phylacteries, in the morning. Rather, we wait till later in the day to put them on. We put them on by mincha time. And the question is, why? What is it coming to teach us? And I want to share with you an idea. I think it's mamish. I think it's really, really powerful. You know, the tefillin, the phylacteries, they represent this connection. We put the arm tefillin on our arm, the shel yad, and we put the head tefillin on our head, the shel rosh. And it represents a tie, a chibur, a kishur, a connection between the arm representing the physical and the head representing the spiritual. The head representing the shamayim, the heavens, and the arm representing the aretz, the gashmi. The head representing the yud, the lamhaba, the spiritual realm, and the arm representing the hay, representing this world. And our job every day when we put on phylacteries, and if you don't put on phylacteries, I highly recommend, it's such a beautiful and holy mitzvah to do. What we're doing when we put on the arm tefillin and the head tefillin is we're binding worlds together. In fact, the Talmud teaches us that someone who is sach, somebody who speaks between his putting on the tefillin shel yad, the arm tefillin, and the shel rosh, the head tefillin, he's not yotze. He has to go back and repeat the blessing. And it really demonstrates what the whole point of this mitzvah is, and that is you're not supposed to make a separation. You can't talk between the two because the two are meant to be one. We're meant to join forces. We're meant to join the two together as one. We're meant to live in this world of physicality, in the world of seeming mundanity, and uplift it. Find the sparks of holiness, the sparks of kedusha to elevate the world. And that is, we don't just pray and connect to God when we're in the house of study, when we're in the synagogue, the shul, but we go well beyond, right? We bring that spiritual experience to our lives, to our families, to our relationships, to our jobs, realizing that everything it is in life that we're doing, we can be connecting to God. B'chol derachecha de'eu, in all of our ways, we are meant to come to know God even more, which means everything that we do in this physical world can be connected and can be in the realm of the spiritual. It depends on our mindset. This is the tefillin, the binding of the shel yad, the arm tefillin with the shel rosh, with the head. In the morning of Tisha B'Av, we don't put this on, because in the morning of Tisha B'Av, it's the heart. It's the heart of during the destruction of the temple, when that center was destroyed, and we have to sulk a little bit, and we have to be sad, and we have to mourn, and realize that we've been off center. And if the Beis Hamikdash is not built yet in our days, then it's it's our responsibility. And so yes, we have to believe that, because we realize that, and we know that the tefillin represents the crown. The tefillin represents splendor. Tefillin is called Pe'er. Pe'er represents a crown. Pe'er represents Tiferes. Tiferes represents harmony and beauty. You know, in Jewish mysticism, Tiferes is the midah it's the character trait that's in the center. Chesed represents unconditional love, that's on an extreme side, and Gevura represents restrictions and borders and, right, strength. That's on the opposite extreme. Tiferes is the hybrid. Tiferes is the middle. When we say in the morning blessings, Oter Yisrael B'Sifara, that we're crowned with Tiferes, it's representing the tefillin. Tefillin represents that. It represents that crown of harmony. Tefillin represents this bond between the Shemayim and the Aretz, between the heaven and the earth. But in the morning of Tisha B'Av, we don't put that on, because we've neglected to do that. We've lived extreme. We've made mistakes. Only later in the day, as the morning restrictions ease, we're reminded that Tisha B'Av is also a day that's called a moed. It's called a festive day. It's the day that we know Mashiach is supposed to be born. It's a day that we don't recite Tachanun. It's a day that we have tremendously high hopes and aspirations. The fact that we're mourning over something that was lost so many thousands of years ago is foretelling the fact that we don't live in despair, that we haven't given up hope. Despair is the ultimate extreme. The Rabbi Nachman teaches us, Ein shom yish b'olam klal. Don't live in the extreme. Don't have yish. Don't give up. Tisha B'Av historically was a day, like we mentioned, when the Jewish people did give up, right? The beginning of the 3 period when the Jewish people said, Vaday meis Moshe, surely Moses is dead. They gave up. And on the 9th of Av, when they cried, a bechia shel chinam, a cry for naught, after the 10 spies came and reported the negativity of the land, they said, oh, we can't go up. They gave up. It was despair, extreme. No, Rabbi Nachman, the great Hasidic master, teaches us, don't despair. Don't live in the realm of extreme. Be balanced. Live in harmony. Tap into the essence of what your tefillin is. It's true in the morning of Tisha B'Av. Don't don your tefillin, because you have to be in that state of mourning. You have to be in that state of sadness. But comes along mincha time, you put that on. You put back on that crown. You put that on. You put back on the teferes, representing that I am an ambassador of God on this world. I am capable of infusing the two worlds together. I am capable of being like my great ancestor, Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, and dreaming and living with that latter vision of channeling worlds together. I am capable of tapping into that first verse of all of Tanakh, of Bereshis Bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz, of connecting heaven and earth. I don't see this as two separate things. I'm not neat in the realm of nitok, which leads to kinus. I'm not disconnecting the two. Rather, I'm creating tikkun. I'm connecting the two. I'm fusing the two. I'm soldering them back together where they truly belong. That's what we're trying to get at. And I want to share with you one more idea about the tefillin. Where's the placement of the tefillin shel rosh? It's not bein einecha, meaning between your eyes. Some people think that when the Torah tells us to place the tefillin between your eyes, it literally means right here between your eyes. But oral tradition teaches us otherwise. It doesn't mean literally between your eyes. It means on the top of your head. And the Talmud teaches us it's a place even more specific on the top of your head. It's the place where the mocho shel tinok is rofes, the place where the brain, where the skull, where the head of a child, a baby, is soft. It's the place right on top of your head. Let's think about this. Where is that place where the head of the child is soft? It's called the anterior fontanelle. That's the area, which is actually fascinatingly a diamond shape area on the top of the head. Diamond shape, right? Diamond, crown, pear. This is crazy, right? It's that area that allows the baby to emerge through the birth canal. The skull is able to now bend and move and compress to get through the birth canal. Without that, if it would just be extreme, if it would just be rigid, if it would be too tough, the child will never be able to emerge. Every single time, my friends, when we put on the tefillin, we're putting it on the place where the tinok, where the place where the child's head is soft. That's representative of the child emerging from the womb. The womb represents the fact that we are stuck, right? In Egypt, we were like a fetus in the womb. We were stuck. There were surrounded borders, limitation, restriction. But what happened after the Exodus? We left Yetzias Mitzrayim, we left Egypt. We experienced an emergence of freedom, a geula, right? And finally, the tinok, the child, was born. Incredibly, at the end of Parshas Bo, what happens? We're introduced to the mitzvah, to the commandment of tefillin. Tefillin, it represents this. It represents the fact that we are like a tinok. We are like a child. Mind you, tinok in Hebrew is the same exact letters of kinus. It's the same exact letters of nituk. It's the same letters of tikkun. Because we can be involved in a life of nituk where we separate the two worlds, where we're living in the realm of extreme, or we could be involved in the realm of tikkun, putting the world together. And one of the ways to tap into that is by rearranging those letters again to Tinok, is connecting to our inner child. The place where we put our tefillin is the makom the b'mocho shel Tinok rofes, the place where the baby's head is soft. That is the place that allows us to emerge from the womb, showing that we're not stuck in Egypt, we're not stuck in the borders, we're not stuck in the Bein HaMitzarim, we're not stuck in the extreme, but we can emerge, we can be free, we can live in harmony, in peace. We can tap into that realm of Tiferes. We should all be zocha. We should be privileged to see the geula, to see the redemption speedily in our days. It should be a tremendous time of joy for all of us. And we should hopefully one day soon dance together in the streets of Jerusalem, offering up holy karbanos in the temple, in the Beis HaMikdash. And we should be able to connect to our true calling, to our true mission here on this world, and realizing that we can live in the realm of He Mitzad Zeh, the Yud Mitzad Zeh, to bring the two worlds together, the He and the Yud, the Shemayim and the Aretz, the heavens and the earth, the body and soul.